The 21st century's largest armored conflict, the Russia-Ukraine war, continues unabated along the entire 700-kilometer-long front line. Many sources provide information about the counteroffensive launched by the Ukrainian army one after the other, allowing us to analyze the future of the war. In recent days, we have seen active Ukrainian offensive and Russian defense from the northernmost of the southernmost parts of the front line. The Russian defense units were caught off guard because they did not expect the Ukrainian offensive to be so fierce. And this is not the only matter of Russia's preparations. The Ukrainian army had already gained a big advantage by hitting Russian positions behind the front line before launching a counteroffensive. So what are the latest developments on the front line recent days? Let's take a look at the latest situation on the map. Let's start with the latest developments on the southern front line. The eastern side of the Kherson has turned into a hell for Russia. The Ukrainian army, which is reinforcing its forces in the region day by day, continues its offensive with a great determination against the Russian positions in the area on the east bank of the river. Russian troops in Ola Pristan, Sahi, Pidisny, and Oleshki, which you can see on the map, are regularly hit by the Ukrainian artillery. It is claimed that Russian casualties in this area are quite high. Of course, these attacks are not only directed against positions on the bank of Dnieper River. Russian positions about 150 kilometers east and south of the front line are also being hit. For example, one of these points is the town of Rakovy. There was a military facility built there in the early days of the Russian military occupation of the region. This facility was a point where Russian soldiers who would be newly deployed into the front line were located. Ukrainian artillery recently blew up this facility. It is claimed that most of the Russian soldiers waiting to go to the front line were killed, and the stored ammunition, important documents were destroyed with the explosions. The Russian authorities are still silent on this issue. Now let's look a little further south to Skadovska on the Black Sea coast. Here, the operational forces of the Russian naval forces carry out regular patrols with gunboats. These patrols are aimed at restricting Ukrainian naval dominance in the Black Sea and reconnaissance of the Ukrainian positions. In recent days, the Russian occupation forces' fast patrol boats off the coast of the Skadovska were caught on the radar of the Ukrainian defense forces. This patrol fleet included a dozen gunboats, including a boat used as a command post. This fleet was eliminated by the successful offensive of the Ukrainian army. With this development, we think it is now possible to say that another phase of the Ukrainian counteroffensive has begun. With this attack, we can say that the Ukrainian counteroffensive has now turned into an operation in which naval forces are participating. On the southern front, we see that the Ukrainian forces' offensive is not limited to Zaporizhia front line and the area around Kherson Oblast. According to the latest reports, the Ukrainian army has been steadily targeting targets on the Crimean Peninsula, which says that the meaning of victory. Local sources report increased activity in Crimea over the last week. According to these sources, there have been explosions in several cities on the Crimean Peninsula, particularly Sevastopol and Simferopol. It is reported that most of these explosions were caused by missiles fired from outside of the Crimean Peninsula. The city of Mariupol, which is called a strategic outpost, started to be hit by Storm Shadow missiles after a short period of time. According to the latest reports, Ukrainian artillery units are shelling the city located on the coast of the Sea of Azov with the Storm Shadow missiles. The most important point targeted by the Ukrainian artillery during these attacks is, of course, the port of Mariupol. The Ukrainian army wants to render this port completely unusable and cut off Russian supplies. Mariupol is not the only supply line on Azov Sea coast. As you know, there is also Berdyansk to south of the city. Berdyansk, just like Mariupol, is right in the middle of the supply lines. According to the latest reports, the city of Berdyansk was also hit by Storm Shadow missiles in recent days. Storm Shadow missiles have become a nightmare for the Russian occupation forces in Mariupol and Berdyansk. The target of the attacks in Berdyansk was the port of Berdyansk, just like Mariupol. Russia, on the other hand, claimed that the explosions there were not caused by the attacks of the Ukrainian army. According to Russian occupation sources in the region, the explosion took place during the training of Russian military units. However, according to local reports, there are no Russian troops near the sites of the explosions. To the east of the city center of Berdyansk, the Ukrainian army's operations in the direction of Berdyansk continue. As you can see on the map, Pyatikhatki is located about 134 kilometers from Berdyansk. This town was recently liberated from Russian occupation after the successful offensive of the Ukrainian army. Operations in the region continues unabated. Furious clashes are taking place between the Ukrainian army trying to advance south of Pyatikhatki and the Russian occupation forces trying to defend the area. According to local reports, the tactical advantage is currently in favor of Ukraine. We can say that the ongoing offensive here is part of the operation to liberate Berdyansk. According to Ukrainian sources, the counteroffensive on the southern front is going according to plan so far. According to the latest reports, the Ukrainian army has so far managed to liberate about 135 square kilometers from the occupation of the Russian army. Let's move north and take a look at the latest developments in the Bakhmut direction. It is possible to say that hot clashes in the region have increased in recent days compared to the past days. According to latest reports, the Ukrainian army continues its operation in the direction of Brykhivka. Although the Russian army is trying to move from a defense position to an offensive position, Ukraine's dominant power in the region does not allow this. We see that the Ukrainian advantage continues in the southern branch of Ukraine's encirclement strategy towards Bakhmut. Just like in northern Bakhmut, Ukrainian offensive in southern Bakhmut are increasing their weight. Local sources report that hot clashes are taking place on the Ivanivsky line. The fighting in the direction of Liman, Kupiansk, and Kreminna, one of the quietest fronts of the war, has increased in intensity in recent days. We are witnessing an increasing pressure of the Ukrainian army in the region. It can be expected that the areas liberated by the Ukrainian army in this region will increase in the coming days. We see that the front line is quite active in general. As we mentioned in our report, there are active clashes along the entire line. When we draw a general framework, we can say that the counteroffensive is progressing successfully as of now. Russia, on the other hand, is approaching a major defeat step by step due to the successive losses in many regions. What do you think? Do you think the losses of the Russian army will increase? Will the Ukrainian counteroffensive be successful? Do you think the Ukrainian army is successful? Do you think it is possible that Bakhmut will fall into Ukrainian hands? We value your opinions. Please share them with us.